uprightness. We have seen this quality a few times in recent past, and amazingly on every occasion, he has been most decent while also being upright. He has demonstrated that in public life, one can be upright and decent at the same time. We are indeed fortunate, sir, to have you to deliver the Professor S.P.Agharkar oration today. Before he begins the oration, we would like you to release the biographical sketch of Professor Agharkar. Dr. Kakodkar.
Good morning to all of you. Dr. Bapat, Dr. Paknekar, all leaders of this great research institute, dear colleagues. Let me at the outset express my gratitude for this invitation to be here on such an important day and also to present a lecture in honor of the founder of this institution, Professor Agharkar. I have been coming to this institution quite often in connection, particularly in connection with the activities of Rajiv Gandhi Science and Technology Commission. But I think being here on the occasion of the Foundation Day, particularly the 70th Foundation Day, I think is a rare honor, and I very sincerely thank all of you for this honor. As you know, I belong to a completely different field than the domain in which you are active, and so it was a bit of a challenge for me to decide a topic for today's lecture. And so I thought a simple thing would be to speak on something about which I have been concerned for some time now, and I'm sure that that's also the concern of all of you. And so I had chosen this particular theme, getting ready for knowledge era. I'm not going to cover all aspects involved in getting ready for this the new opportunity or new challenges. Cover only a few specific themes, but I think those are important, and I am particularly concerned about the fact that in terms of doing science, and we just heard from Dr. Paknikar the wonderful work that you are doing, and I was quite impressed by uh, the, the, the theme, the objective of this institution, and particularly the words you had highlighted. I think that is the crux of the matter, and you would agree with me that country as a whole, by and large, uh, we are not true to those words. We have actually, and it's, to me it seems it's a part of our kind of cultural habits which have been imbibed for maybe decades or maybe even centuries. And so for us, there is a great divide between whatever you consider as pure, and so by contrast everything else is impure. And that to me is the central problem that we need to overcome. And that's, I'm not going to say it in those crude words from now onwards, but I thought let me say this upfront. Now, see, we are all aware of our kind of very great heritage. We are proud of India's capabilities in earlier years, and those bar chart in the is actually the work done by somebody in Europe. The reference is there, and he sort of tracked the GDP of some of the important countries right from year 1 till today, and you can clearly see India was the most important country in the world, even seen from pure economic parameters. We know about Indian heritage in terms of knowledge, in terms of its cultural values and so on and so forth. But I think India was, we talk about India wanting to become economic superpower, but India was a superpower. In fact, almost up to the year 1700, somewhere up to this time. And that time onwards, of course, the decline started. I'm not going to go into the reasons why the decline started, but that period roughly coincides with the emergence of industrial era, but it also coincides with the somewhat oppressive foreign rule India has been subjected to, the later part of Mughal era, and of course the entire British era. I am aware that there are people who have done research into finding this relationship between the conditions existing and the downfall. But the fact is that, one simple way to say that, well, we missed the industrial revolution because we ignored technologies. That may be only a half truth, because India did possess several technological skills which were again best in the contemporary world. We all know about textile. We all know about the iron pillar and so on and so forth. These are, in fact, some of them are technological marvels even today. But then, of course, we lost out. But that's so. The short point I want to make is the fact that now that we are entering the knowledge era, I think we need to very carefully look at ourselves and make sure that the we are seeing some improvement in the post-independent era. Certainly, in relative terms, Indian economy is improving. Very marginal improvement. Uh, it could be again by a variety of factors, and I do not wish to go into that fact. But the three key ingredients, according to me, economists would describe GDP as consisting of several driving forces. But to me, GDP has three drivers. Number one, raw materials. Number two, people, human resource. And number three, technology. Today, India is no longer a resource-rich country in terms of raw materials. It was a resource-rich country at one stage. Of course, it has been depleted, consumed by ourselves or exported out. But also, we have to see this also in the context of, or in terms of per capita resource availability, and our population has gone up. So that also has contributed to decline in the per capita resource availability. So according to me, today we are a resource poor country. So that, of course, resources are important to value add, but value add we must. And that requires, of course, two things. It requires people. You may call it labor, you may call it intellectual people, you may call it technologists, but you require people, and more capable people are, they can add greater value. And of course, you require technology, bring to bear the latest in knowledge to be able to do value addition at higher and higher level. Now, I think it is the latter two which we must really focus on. We are endowed with large young population, and so that's an opportunity. But I think it's more important that using this resource, human resource, we actually leverage knowledge and bring in better technologies, and so the rate of contribution to our economy could be that much larger. Now, technology, and that is the theme I wish to run, that you do research, you create new knowledge, but I think, and that I would say last 5-6 years at least, if not longer, India's track record has been very good. The publication rates have gone up, and so I think we have started doing better in the research, and that in a way was our strong point, at least in terms of some of the very high level of research institutions that we have been having. However, ability to translate that new knowledge into new technology has been by and large our weak point. I know there are exceptions. This institution itself is to some extent an exception. Dr. Kulkarni is sitting here. NCL is an exception. There are other institutions in the country which are an exception. But the number is very small compared to the size of this country, the size of scientific community, and, and so on and so forth. So, in fact, I'm going to focus essentially on that segment of this domain. So, over and above the highest potential for economic growth of technology, I think we must recognize that technology is the key to comprehensive national power. we know several countries in the world, and we try to kind of recollect which are the countries which come immediately to our mind. And you will find the countries which have excelled technologically, they invariably come first. They invariably are at the top of the list. And so, in terms of the relative influence over the world as a whole, technology is a tremendous contributor to the comprehensive national power. Technology empowers citizens and societies and also nations. But we must also recognize that this is a double-edged weapon. It empowering can be in a good sense, empowering can also be in a bad sense. Technology can also create what in our local language we call it bhasmasur. That also is a contribution of technology. And so, as we progress in technology, I think we must also take care that the grooming of human minds goes on the right track, and that's equally important. Technology enables strategic autonomy, and in fact, in spite of the fact that I think technologically India is not an illiterate country, but at times one wonders where the decision-making process, particularly when it comes to involving technology, whether we are taking those decisions on a so-called our own thinking, our own autonomous thought, or at our own concept of what is our long-term interest, or whether those decisions are actually vendor-driven. Somebody wants to sell something, and then for a variety of reasons we adopt technology. And that ability to take those autonomous decisions the right way, it actually needs a fair bit of understanding of technology. And then of course the robust decision making that avoids vulnerability is also an element dependent on good understanding of technology. So it's not just the economy, but the economy, military power, and of course the quality of life of people, they're all driven by technology. And so efficient translation of new knowledge to competitive products is, according to me, the key to success in the current day interdependent world. Now, having said that, I think let us look at ourselves as to how we are doing this. And to be able to do that, I have here the R&D magazine of Bettel. They periodically publish data on the R&D or R&D expenditure of different countries, and this figure appears in their magazine year after year. The y-axis, the ordinate, is actually the number of scientists and technologists per million people, per million population. And on the x-axis, it is the expenditure on R&D in terms of percentage of GDP. And India is here. These circles, the size of these circles, it actually denotes the absolute expenditure that countries are making. So, for example, India may be 0.8% of India's GDP, but the absolute expenditure that we make is denoted by the size of that circle. Notice, for example, Israel is here. It expends much higher percentage of their GDP, but notice the absolute expenditure that Israel makes is actually much smaller than what we make in India. In fact, what we spend in India is actually larger than Israel, Canada, Sweden, UK, Switzerland, Finland. And you would recognize all these countries are technologically very, very advanced. The question that we should ask ourselves is that if these countries can produce technologies which are recognized world over with an expenditure much less than ours, why are we not comparable in technological capability? And that's the question that I think we must ask ourselves. When I looked at that, first hand feeling was that, yeah, but India is a large country and so we have to cater to large number of people. So maybe our resources are getting spread very thin. That's not the case. For example, it's only simple arithmetic, you take this expenditure that we make and you can calculate roughly say 0.8% of our GDP is what we spend. Divide by the total number of full-time equivalents in science, and you will end up with a number something like 160 lakhs. We have 160 lakh full-time workers. I'm sorry, 160,000, 0.16 million. And we are spending something like 7 million rupees per full-time equivalent. And that's the conclusion you would reach. Now this number is comparable to best in the world. You know, at individual scientist level, I may feel that I get nothing for my experiments, I get nothing for my lab. But the fact is, in terms of utilization of taxpayers' money, each one of us is costing taxpayer 7 million rupees, and which is the comparable to best anywhere in the world. So it is for us to worry about where this money goes and why we are not able to translate the taxpayers' money into the return which is comparable with what the scientific community in other countries is able to produce. And this is the main challenge that I think we must hold ourselves accountable for. Of course, one of the ills of our working is the industry investment is very low. And of course, one way to say is the blame industry that they are not spending. You ask industry people, they will say, all right, but you tell us whether that money will be put to good use. And so it is a two-way traffic. We need to build those bridges where industry would also feel. Industry, if they get confidence that there is value, they will gain by that investment. Why would industry not invest? And so that's another thing that I think we need to ask ourselves. So while investment in R&D needs to grow, and that I think is undisputed. I'm not making an argument that just because that's the situation, I think 0.8% of GDP, as you can see on that curve, is low by any standard. And there is a case for a large country like India to seek larger public investment, larger industry investment. But at the same time, we must correct ourselves to find ways and means to create better efficiency in terms of translating that investment into public good. And this is what translates into, we have this huge difference between our exports and imports, balance of payment issue. I said, okay, let's look at the top items of import, some 10, 15 items of import, and also look at top 10, 15 items of export. I earlier thought that the items we export and items we import would be completely different things. Not so. If you see that list, the itemization, that heading, majority of the items, the heading is identical. Iron ore, we export. The heading is, I think, iron and steel. We import a lot, we export a lot. We are supposed to be a key country in terms of holding high quality iron ore. So I would imagine that we would be a major exporter. It's not so. We are actually a net importer. And that's the case with many other things. There are only three exceptions. One, vehicles. Second, pharmaceuticals, pharma sector. And third, clothing. In these three areas, India has become a major exporter. And you would notice that in these three areas, somehow the industry has picked up R&D much better than public funded institutions. And of course, in pharma, we must also give credit to the public funded institution. They are doing well, and there is actually a very good relationship. The same thing is true to some extent in chemicals. But by and large, you would find that, see, if our conversion of knowledge to technologies was competitive by global standards, we shouldn't have seen this picture. In every element, we should have become a net exporter, at least wherever we have some strong points. So I think quite apart from, I was also involved in the Technology Vision 2035 exercise, where we looked at India up to the year 2035, and we looked at people, the needs of the people, what kind of technologies will become important, and I think those are all directions to pursue, where we must make progress in technology areas. But even as we do that, as we meet the requirements of Indians, a simple economic logic will suggest that these are the areas we must concentrate our research on, our technologies on, and take it to a level where we are counted. So having stated that problem, I want to divide this in three domains. First domain, education and research, because I think that's where that's the starting point. The second domain is of the issues related to policy and the challenges of translating the research into commercial products. And the third segment I want to devote is in terms of rural India, because I think rural India is actually 2/3 of India even today. And we can't be just focusing on the situation or the needs or the interests of urban India, because the larger India is there in villages, where actually the per capita earning income could well be less than half of the average per capita income in cities. And that is another technology challenge in terms of delivery to society. So these are the three domains I want to talk about. Now, talking about education and research, first about education system itself. Now we had, India had this Gurukul system, and the earlier era where India was an economic superpower, that was the era when, or even earlier than that, we have these rishis and gurus and their ashrams and everybody going there and learning. So that was actually an education system of extremely high quality, very flexible schedules. The program was tuned practically for every student, depending on the needs, depending on what the student wants to excel on, and so on and so forth. flexible schedules and syllabi that were highly personalized to every student's requirement. And I think it had delivered results at that time. It still, in my view, has a lot of strong points. But let's recognize that today the numbers that we are doing, that method perhaps is not scalable. In spite of all these strong points, there is this issue. Then we have the education system as we know, which roughly came along with the industrial era perhaps. Whether it came along with that or it came along with Macaulay or whatever, but the education system has become actually an industrial production line. And so it's a question of mass enrollment. The priority has been, well, take literacy in somewhat broader sense. They become aware of several things that is there in the textbooks or that is there mentioned in the syllabus. And we expect students to recall. At the time of exam, we ask questions on them. We expect them to recall, put that. Whosoever able to do that better stands first. Now, and that has become the driving force for everybody. In contrast to the ability for problem solving, curiosity driven exploration, so on and so forth. So the knowledge, of course students do get knowledge, but that's knowledge limited to what is there in the books or what the syllabus prescribes. Today, of course, for example, in cities, you have modern schools, and there is a lot of transformation that we see. World over, this is being talked about, technology-enabled education culture, balance between hard and soft intellectual skills. Now, I think that's where I think we should be able to move, recognizing the fact that we have a problem of scale. We have a problem of reaching the unreached. So what we need really is an open public infrastructure and open knowledge base available to everybody. Then we need technology-enabled pedagogy. And then we need to link that education with not just socially useful productive work, but according to me, real life socially useful productive work. There are several developmental programs going on all over cities, villages, everywhere. And I think we must create opportunities for students to get linked with those programs, even as they learn, in the same spirit as the importance of SUPW in education. And of course, today, in spite of the numbers involved, technology does allow you to create a degree of personalized and adaptive learning. So I think there is a possibility of taking care of masses, taking care of numbers, and also bring back the strong points of the education system as it was earlier, or the right kind of education system where we must allow each child to learn, study according to the pace that is comfortable, according to the curiosities that arise in individual minds, and so on and so forth. Today what has happened is we have this high-stake assessment testing. Everybody wants to run JEE and IAS and so on and so forth. And so it probably produces, high test score. I score 98.9% and so on. And certainly those children are very bright, very good. Without that, you can't achieve that. But the question is, but does it produce better educated students? The kind that can ensure a stronger, competitive, and more enlightened society. Are we producing children who will run the rat race, or are we producing children who will create that kind of society? That is the question. And I think we must recognize that these things are happening. But I think it's important that along with whatever is the formal education system, many of these things can be done informally, can run in parallel, can influence the formal system.